Good evening. Welcome to Central News for Monday, the 22nd of July. I'm Hilary Entwistle. In today's news, Tauranga-based iwi Ngāi Te Rangi have reached an agreement in principle with the government on their treaty claim. The deal involves $29.5 million in cash, plus the vesting of key sites including Maunga Rangi Pā on the Waitao stream, Te Rere Tū Kahia, the coastal strip at Tetley Road in Katikati, Karewa Island and Motauta Rabbit Island. Chairman of the Trust says this is a start to healing the pain of the past.
There was a political exercise aimed at increasing the amount of land that was going to be available to settlers, nothing more and nothing less. So the treaty claim itself is that the Crown, having made these assurances, and then having instituted a system of law in New Zealand, then itself breached its own laws. So all we were doing is that. Now, I think that iwi and Ngāi Te Rangi included would have preferred to have progressed our claims through the courts of law.
Overseas laboratories claiming New Zealand Manuka honey is being altered with cane sugar have been out-scienced. Dr. Karen Rogers at GNS Science has proven internationally accepted laboratory tests for cane sugar contamination in honey, often given false results, causing problems for Manuka and honey in overseas markets. High bioactive Manuka honey shipments worth about $6 million failed border tests in 2010, threatening to close market access in the United States and China. The results led overseas agencies to assume the honey had added sugar, resulting in automatic disqualification by importing countries. Karen says the results were false and her research has led to the acceptance of new, correct test criteria to accommodate New Zealand honey. For 20 years, New Zealand First has argued and defended economic policies including better medical care, better aged care and free health care for children under 6 years old. Now the party looks towards a new political agenda, an overall plan to tackle unemployment, particularly in youth. In celebration of the party's 20th birthday, party leader Winston Peters fronted a crowd of around 50 Tauranga supporters at the Umano Bowling Club yesterday. Winston says the government claims New Zealand's unemployment rate is a little more than 6%, but this is wrong as the method they are using counts people who work as little as 1 hour a week as employed. Now for our region's weather, Hamilton, your Tuesday will become cloudy with a northeasterly developing. Your expected high is 15 and an overnight low of 6. Tuesday for you, Tauranga, will become cloudy with light winds. Your expected high is 16 and an overnight low of 8. Just ahead, Biosecurity Month in the Waikato. Welcome to Central News on TV Central. It is Biosecurity Month this July and we have chatted with the Waikato Regional Council. Later on in the program we find out how the Bay of Plenty compares, but for now it's the last part of the interview with the Waikato.
Now tell us about the common weeds that we have here in the Waikato.
Yeah, well that's pretty big question. There are a lot of common weeds in the Waikato. I mean, the ones that the Waikato Regional Council probably spend a lot of time on is the likes of woolly nightshade, wild ginger, and moth plant, and they're very common throughout the Waikato. But there are other, probably more very common weeds out there, like Tradescantia, which is a ground cover, and the vines like Japanese honeysuckle, which are also quite invasive. So.
Now, can you explain the difference between containment pest plants and eradication pest plants?
Yeah, the containment pest plants are plants that haven't reached their full potential yet within the Waikato. So our goal is to keep them in their current distribution, keep them where they are and reduce their spread. But they are common, we're not going to eradicate them. Whereas eradication plants are low numbers, we don't have many sites of those plants, and the potential to impact on the Waikato's environment and production is massive. So we focus hard to eradicate those pests. But the key with those eradications, that they need to be low, very low numbers for us to even think about it.
So what are the most threatening to our environment?
Well, the vines, for pest plants anyway, vines in the ground covers, like I said, Tradescantia is pretty common. It's in most people's backyards, it's throughout our forests, and it's hard to kill. And the vines can climb right to the top of the tree and topple them over. And like I said earlier, Japanese honeysuckle, ivy, yeah, they're all bad, but they're also plants that the horses bolted. There's no going back on these plants, so we could invest a lot of time into it across the region and have no gain. So we try and think about those locally, you know. In the forest, is Tradescantia affecting you? We can give advice and help manage that, yeah.
And what should we be looking for to try and identify them?
Well, yeah, well, I guess that's a big question because again, there's lots of different plants out there and it depends on where they are. But I try and encourage people to think about what's changed. If you're on the back of the farm or on your back section and something's different, that plant wasn't there a week ago, a month ago, maybe it shouldn't be there, or the plant looks out of place. It just doesn't look right. Yeah, so look for things that have changed. Something that was small is now massive very quickly. You know, look for those sort of things, I guess, is the big thing. But also, I mean, keep an eye out, learn how things, learn about pest plants and those sort of things as well.
And do you have any tips to prevent botanic pests coming into our region?
Yep, so once again, learn about pest plants, learn how they spread, and it can be very practical, from not dumping your garden waste over the back of the fence, and that's as simple as your grass clippings. Alligator weed lives in the grasses in urban properties around Hamilton, so you could potentially be spreading something. If you're a digger operator, farmer, clean your gear before it comes on and before it leaves your property, and that'll help prevent things spreading as well. And if you are in the backyard and you get rid of a few weeds and you've got them on your trailer, cover your trailer up so it's not going to blow around in the wind. But yep, look at the Plant Me Instead book as well, and that'll help identify the different weeds that are out there that you need to keep an eye out for.
Now tell us about your Weed Busters service.
Yep, so Weed Busters is a national program. It's interagency, so it's the regional councils, DOC, also Department of Conservation. They are big in this as well, and it's about public awareness, education is the main thing. The Waikato Regional Council is right into the Weed Busters program, and we have funding available, small funding available for communities that want to deal with weeds in the areas. So.
Now, interestingly, one of the council's tips to manage pest plants is to plant a recommended plant. So what are some of these?
Oh, okay. Well, it depends on the environment, but I guess the best thing to do is grab your Plant Me Instead book. In that book, it shows you what the pest is that you should get rid of and some alternatives to planting in those areas. But we encourage natives. Natives bring back the birds, and they are ideal for New Zealand's conditions. So we encourage that. Check out our website to see what other different native plants you can plant in the different parts of the Waikato.
And is there anywhere we should be going to try and identify these pests?
So the Weed Busters website it's got a massive database in there for different weeds and how to manage them, why they're a pest, where they come from. Lots of information. Our website is another good one for looking at different plants that we're targeting in the Waikato, and that's an important place to look, because the Bay of Plenty will have a different set of plants that they manage. We do have some overlap, but yeah, just get online, have a look. There's lots of different places to have a look. Give us a call, ask us, ask us about what plants are around.
Stay tuned, as later on we see how the Bay compares. Up next, the Sky City deal. Welcome back. The Sky City deal has plagued our headlines of our news in New Zealand for a while now. I spoke with Family First to see why they are not happy with the deal. Welcome to the program, Bob. Now let's discuss tonight pokies. Where are we at with the Sky City?
Well, in effect, what the government is doing is they're desperate for a convention centre, and in return they're willing to increase the amount of pokie machines. I think it's 200 pokie machines and 40 gaming tables. And I think what people are concerned about is they can see the economic benefit of having a convention centre, but they also know that pokies is a major issue. If you look at the research, it shows that problem gambling is a huge issue, especially amongst Māori, especially amongst low-income families, who, of course, you're probably thinking, well, how can they afford it? That's the exact issue. They can't afford it, and yet they're attracted to it, and it's key contributor towards child abuse, domestic violence, poverty in families. So, I think you've got to weigh up those two issues. But I think the other thing that really grates people is the process. In effect, a deal has been done, and I think at a government level, when you want a convention centre in Auckland, you go and you find and you get good tenders from all groups, and you find out what is the best solution. In effect, the government has just gone and bartered, horse traded with Sky City, and unfortunately, we're going to have this social issue as a response. I still think yes, we could have a convention centre, but why does it have to be related to Sky City? Why does it have to be traded for pokie machines?
Because how much money are they saying that the Sky City Convention Centre economically will bring?
The convention centre is going to cost $400 million, and my understanding is that the Sky City are going to get sort of tax credits or benefits of about $500 million. So, look, it's that incentive. I mean, sure, Sky City got to put up the $400 million, they've got to fund it, but at the same time, they're also going to make the profits out of the convention centre once it's up and running. But let's just go back to the initial proposal. I think, if anyone, say for example, someone's going to buy a house, the first thing they do is they go around and get quotes. They don't just go to one company and say, I want to buy a house off you, what can I give you so that you build the house for me? And that's in effect what the government has done, and I think that's why it really rankles a lot of people. But I think also we have to acknowledge that New Zealand communities are trying to lower the amount of pokie machines. They can see the harm in it. There isn't a lot of redeeming factors in it. I don't think tourists come to New Zealand and think, hey, I'm in Las Vegas, but it's in the South Pacific. They don't come here for that. Why do people come to New Zealand? They come to see the beauty of the country. And so I don't see the need for us to be creating this huge casino.
Because, a lot of community groups are trying to bring down those pokie machines in their own communities. Do you think effectively that the government is pretty much just turning a blind eye to that, really, aren't they? Yeah,
well, it's interesting. The government is saying, oh, look, we've got 500 less pokie machines since we've been in power. In effect, that's happened because local communities have adopted a sinking lid policy in their local area because they know the harm. They know that the people who are standing with those one-armed bandits are the families that can't afford it and who have probably got kids, sitting outside just needing a decent feed. So I don't think the government can take credit for reducing the number of pokie machines. It's been local councils who have been doing a fantastic job, and we've been making submissions to local councils to say that. But at the end of the day, this deal is immediately going to pour a whole lot of extra pokie machines into this one central location, and desperate families are going to make their way there, and it's a tragedy.
What about where the government's at now? John Key has basically said to his national members, vote for this or feel the repercussions. What do you think really needs to be done from those members?
It's not the first time. He did it with the anti-smacking law as well. He whipped his government to vote for banning smacking. So, look, it's no surprise that he's done that. At the end of the day, they would argue that it's a sort of a policy that they've come into the election with. I guess people were aware of it at the election in the same way of the asset sales. And I still think there's a problem because only every 3 years can we get government back on track with a general election. And that's why I'm a firm believer in binding referendums, and I think the state asset sales referendum has been a good thing. I think the smacking referendum should have been taken note of, because I think in democracy, even though you delegate power to politicians, when a clear message is sent from the community, I think politicians should be forced to listen to that. And, well, they were sent a clear message on the anti-smacking. It would be interesting to have a referendum on the pokey machine deal. We've actually polled in Auckland on the issue, and New Zealanders were not in favour of it. Or of increasing in pokey machines in general. So, I think governments need to listen.
So for those viewers who are watching, what do you suggest that they do if they're not happy with this deal?
Well, it's gone to select committee now, so that means, sure, it might seem like a bit of a, yes, we're listening to you. But I think it's important that community groups do make submissions. I think it's important that the politicians are made to understand the social consequences of gambling. It sounds very nice that we have this big Sky City and we have this big tower and foreigners come to the country and they go to this, it sounds very Las Vegas and it sounds very attractive, but the fact of the matter is there is huge social cost, and I think we need to take that into account. I think when groups like Salvation Army, who are dealing with the fallout from problem gambling, are really concerned, I think we do need to listen to them, and I think they're putting up good evidence.
Coming up next, biosecurity in the Bay. If you have just joined us, welcome to Central News. Well, we know alligator weed is a problem in the Waikato, but is it in the Bay of Plenty? I spoke with the Bay of Plenty Regional Council's biosecurity officer to see what they do for the month.
So Biosecurity Month is an initiative that was initiated by the New Zealand Biosecurity Institute. So that's an incorporated society that has members from around the country that have biosecurity interests, or it's a core part of their jobs, research institutes, etc. And it's really about raising awareness in the public about biosecurity issues on a national level. Obviously, local regions such as ourselves have quite region-specific issues, but this is, I guess, a broader sense.
What is the Regional Council's role in pest management, and what exactly is the Regional Pest Management Plan?
So we have responsibility under the Biosecurity Act to manage pests in our region, and I'm not talking about every single pest that's currently present. We manage that through the Regional Pest Management Plan. That is a document that outlines rules and responsibilities for a bunch of pests in the Bay of Plenty region. Different levels of classification mean that there are different rules surrounding that, and we review that on a five-year basis.
How many pests are currently managed under the Regional Pest Management Plan?
Yeah, and the current one, which goes from 2011 to 2016, we have 109 pest plants and 28 pest animals. There are different classifications according to that. So we go from agency pests, which are typically managed by Crown institutes such as Ministry for Primary Industries and Department of Conservation. There are 13 currently. Exclusion eradication pests, that basically are pests that we want to exclude from coming into the region or eradicate if they're currently present, and we have 14 of them. We have 29 containment pests, and these are the ones where we put rules that landowners are responsible for control on their lands. And then there's 80 restricted pests, and they're pests that we support landowner efforts to control, but we certainly aren't putting rules in place to enforce that control.
What are an example of some of those restricted lower level pests?
Things like pampas, possums, rats, stoats, etc. So they're basically pests that are currently widespread, and with the current resourcing that we have in the Regional Council, we deem it's unfeasible to enforce control. Also, the costs on landowners would be significant if we were to put rules in place saying you must remove all possums from your land, etc.
Does the classification dictate how the Regional Council support landowners?
It certainly does. So, like I said, the agency pests are typically managed by Crown agencies, so they take the responsibility for surveillance and control. We do provide support sometimes through surveillance, but it's very strategic. Exclusion eradication pests are pests that we take full responsibility for, so that's all surveillance, monitoring and control. So basically we'll go to a landowner and say we've identified this pest on their property, and we go on there and cover all the costs. The containment pests are probably the more controversial ones because there are obligations on landowners to control them. We tend to rely on voluntary compliance. We do have powers under the Biosecurity Act to go and enforce rules, but we're also quite pragmatic in the fact that these do create sometimes significant financial burden on landowners. So we tend to prefer to work with landowners to control animals or plants to an agreed outcome rather than get the stick out.
What is an example of some of those containment pests then?
Some locally are probably things like woolly nightshade and wild kiwifruit, and from an animal perspective, things like goats. So we work with landowners to control them. Often we'll send contractors around to identify what containment pests are on a person's property. We provide them with a list of them, and we come back and revisit to ensure that they've done what they're supposed to have done. It isn't always that simple, and sometimes we do have to push things along a bit, but hopefully we have proactive landowners that understand the rules of the RPMP and are willing to comply with it.
So what happens when the Regional Pest Management Plan expires?
We'll revisit it, so it goes through a whole process of developments, and once we've developed a plan, we take it out for full public consultation, so landowners have the opportunities to submit on it, and then we basically review the submissions, review the plan and modify it as required, and then it goes to council for approval. The next process that we're going through is going to be slightly different, because there's a thing called the National Policy Direction, which is attempting to align all regional pest management plans from around the country and create some form of consistency. So there is going to be some significant change, although the way our plan currently sits, we don't think it's going to be significant for our region.
How will they do that with so many different regions and so many different areas?
Yeah, it's based on a cost-benefit analysis, so we have independent experts that basically identify the pests that are important to us, and they run models to basically see whether it's feasible in the current environment to control. And from that we develop rules that we think are going to be obviously fair to the landowners in the region, but also allow us to do what we're supposed to do, which is control pests in the Bay of Plenty.
You mentioned before that it's quite challenging because there's a lot of landowners and that kind of thing. What other challenges do you face in the Bay of Plenty?
Yeah, I mean, just the number of landowners we're dealing with, we're talking of tens of thousands of landowners across the region, so dealing with them on an individual level can be challenging, and it is very time consuming and does take up a lot of the resource that we currently have. Biosecurity can be very proactive. We understand the pests that are currently there, but you're never sure what the next new issue is, or when a pest is really going to get out of control. And yeah, a lot of people probably don't. I mean, there are plenty of society that do understand the rules of the RPMP, but we're putting a real emphasis probably in the next year or two to re-educate the public so they completely understand where we're coming from and why rules are in place.
You can view any pests and find out more information on their website, boprc.gov.nz. That is the news for today. We really want you to be involved, so like us on Facebook, let us know your views. If you have news including your own video and photos, go to our website and hit upload. Thanks for joining us. I'll be back tomorrow night with more guests from in and around the regions. I'm Hilary Entwistle. Have a lovely evening.
This has been an Alpha Media production, a division of Television Media Group.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.